Greetings everyone. Again, Tony Drake here to share with you important information regarding VK Platinum, which is our product line, and just some of the more detailed areas of information that people should know. For starters, I want people to consider something. The only doubt that people have about the natural plants that has the intelligence to do just about anything that the body needs in terms of repairing itself, healing itself, nourishing itself. Listen, people only doubt that information because there's so much confusion out here, you know? I mean, you get one source of information in one particular environment, and then it's confirmed not only through medical research, but information that has been presented by many scholars, physicians, etc. And people doubt that, even though the shamans and everybody else have shown that certain plants have certain properties that will not only heal the body, but can improve the body's overall function on multiple levels: physical, mental, emotional, psychological. It can actually rewire the brain. Here's the deal though. In one respect, you have information that becomes available that we all have some knowledge of. Like, we know ginger is good for us, yes. We know that blue vervain has many properties. We know that sarsaparilla has certain properties and healing elements that help reshape the human physiology, or I should say the human biology, particularly when it's under stress and it's having some issues. Well, that information is well documented in medical journals. However, because the architects who rule this world, they choose not to give you absolute information that encourages you to dig deeper and go further. What they do is they finance another school of thought to challenge the information that most people already know or is coming into the knowledge of. It's already been proven. At one point, I heard them talking about avocados were too fatty. I also heard them talking about watermelon was not as healthy as most people think it is. I've constantly heard all of these controversial comments, these backwards and forward comments to delegitimize information that already has been presented as factual. Now, they do that for a reason. They do that so that they can insert the pharmaceutical industry. And by inserting the pharmaceutical industry in the middle of that now created controversy, what they have effectively done is create confusion so that you question things. Well, first I thought it was this, then I thought it was that. That's what they do. That is the beginning of understanding the value of choice. Are you going to do more of your research, and what results is it producing for you? If you know that these results are consistent, you know these results work, then there's no controversy. Controversy and confusion is for those who are easy to manipulate anyway, and who's not solid or sound in their position of understanding and realizing what works and what doesn't work, and more importantly, the results that they've achieved and received from that information or the use of those substances. Now, once they insert that pharmaceutical industry, here's what happens. The pharmaceutical industries get all of the attention. They get all of the commercials. They get all of the funding, etc., etc. But the opposition to the original hypothesis of these plants working, neither of those two get any press. In fact, it's not even talked about at all. They prefer to instead replace that information with celebrities and etc., just to keep you distracted. So your responsibility is to find what works from the intelligence of nature and use it consistently. That keeps you alive, that keeps you healthy, and that keeps you productive in this life that we have on this planet, in this world today. So make no mistakes about it. Confusion is created on purpose, but it is your decision to discern what is false, what is true, based on your own experience with it. For instance, and I talked about this before, Once Dr. Sabian and I were at his office in Chicago. One day I came to visit him. And so he gave me this herb. Again, it's called Pollen. So I drank this herb. And I took a little taste of it. And I was like, wow, Sabian, man, this is like bitter. This is horrible. Who can drink this? I can't drink this. And then he said to me, scared. I'm not scared, but it's very, very difficult to drink, man. And he said, guess what? And I'm like, what? He said, this melts tumors. I'm like, wow. Pollen. What I'm saying to you is, nature's intelligence is not simply one way. You have some plants that are very powerful that you will take, and they are not difficult to consume or to take, to ingest. But then you have some plants that are almost impossible to ingest. They taste awful based on our cultivated taste buds of what tastes good and what shouldn't. And that's what we've been programmed all of our lives. But if you look at an animal, they get sick. But let's emphasize a specific animal. Dogs and cats. When they get sick, they stop eating. And they look for specific grass to eat, and they eat it. Because they know there's certain properties in those plants that they're eating that's going to help cure them. There is no difference than what those animals are doing and what humans need to do. All we did was we looked at VK Platinum and we looked at what are the best ingredients that we could use to reprogram the body to function a certain way. Remember, the liver has over 100 different tasks that it does. The liver, again, is like the ultimate alchemist. And I want you to look up that term, alchemy, to convert one substance into another substance. Now, there's been this issue about, alkaline acid. But if a plant is neutral, if you take a substance and let's say it's neutral on the pH scale, when you take that into your body determines whether or not it's acid or alkaline. Your body will determine that. Once you put it into your body, the microvilli in the small intestines, and the way it moves through your body to the liver, etc., the liver will convert it if it has value, and it's natural, and its DNA code connects directly with the intelligence of nature and hasn't been tampered with. It will take that plant and convert it into something because the liver, like a creator, will take that substance and make it into something different that the body needs. It will take vitamin C from plants and convert it into maybe magnesium, molybdenum. It will convert it into what it needs. It is the master alchemist, the liver. Now we know that the liver does all of these different functions in the body. It determines what the body needs. The body needs more T cells, the liver will produce it. It needs more phagocytes, it will produce it. More T cells, it will produce it. More macrophages, it will produce it. The key here is to understand that the intelligence of nature, like the intelligence of your physiology, that has been corrupted by social engineering and all of the artificial things that we've eaten that's weakened us like we cannot possibly imagine. Cauliflower is not natural. It's man-made. Carrots are not natural. They're absolutely man-made. I remember Satan told me that years ago. He said, well, listen, carrots are not natural. They're man-made. I'm like, well, how did they make them, Satan? He said they were made in Holland. He said, look, they took the sweet potato plant and they took the Queen Anne's lace, which is another term for wild carrot. They took it and they crossbred it so that the Queen Anne's lace root, which is a very small root, it's very small, it's not big like a carrot, it's small. When you break it, taste it, it tastes like a light carrot. That's what it tastes like. So they crossed it with the sweet potato plant so that that plant would have beta carotene and the color, and it could grow large. Listen, Sabian explained to me, look, once that is done, there's no natural binding because these two plants would never cross in nature. Two different species, they would never cross. So you need a binder to keep them together. Once he broke that down to me, I started to identify all of these unnatural plants that we consume. Is broccoli natural? Is cabbage natural? Is kale natural? There's a natural kale. but it grows by rivers. It grows in a little tight bunch, and it mostly grows in like northern regions like Russia and parts of Europe. But most of the food that we consume is man-made. Understand that. Absolutely man-made. Can you go show me wild celery, wild Brussels sprouts? You can't. Mostly everything we consume is man-made. Now, is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. But since we are consuming a lot of unnatural plants that's not giving us the intelligence of nature's DNA, it's giving us an adulterated version of it, then we need to be able to identify the natural plants throughout the season. For example, in the spring, certain plants grow, right? I'm in Georgia. There's a little yellow lily flower that comes up in the spring, early spring, and it lasts only for a few months, and then it's gone. You cannot replant it. It won't grow anymore until the next season. Pollen is pine pollen. You see these pine trees grow all over the place, and pine pollen you see everywhere. When pine pollen is blowing everywhere, it's on cars, it's on everything. Some years it's even more pollen, very high levels of pollen. Here's what you should know about this pollen, particularly men. That pine pollen is good for your reproductive system. Male deers lick it, and you know male deers are powerful. That pollen should be collected. Learn how to collect it by simply tying bags on a tree. Wrap it, let the pine tassels fall into it, shake the pollen loose. You may have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 bags. Get it away from environments where people are going to mess with the bags. Try to find somewhere rural that you can tie these paper bags around the pollen tassels, and you collect that pollen. Sift it, get all of the debris out of it, sift it with a fine sieve. Then what you want to do is you want to put it in the blender and break it, because then you can get cracked. The structure of the pollen is so tightly bound to get the nutrients, you have to crack it. So you take the volume of it, put it in the blender, and blend it until it's a fine powder that cracks the outer shell of the pine pollen. Now you can use it throughout the year to keep yourself healthy. That's the intelligence of nature. You should be able to identify all of the plants, natural plants that are edible and medicinal. And that comes in the spring, it comes in the summer. A whole different variety of plants bloom in the summer. By the fall, another whole group of plants will grow in the fall. And then by the winter, everything is about to go into the dormant stage. Right now in Georgia, what's everywhere right now? Goldenrod. It's everywhere. So you're supposed to be collecting the goldenrod, right? Tie it, hang it upside down so all of the minerals move to the flowers, dry it, and that becomes one of the teas that you use throughout the year. These are the processes that we have to learn. How to work with the natural cycles of nature. That keeps us healthy. And make sure that we add that into our nutritional regimen using natural plants, the DNA of nature. If the animals consume it, then humans can consume it. Animals are not going to consume something that's going to kill them. So what you want to do is you want to learn how to identify the plants so that you can use them throughout the year. Add that to your regimen. Eat healthy. Take care of yourself. That's the key. Now let's talk about water. Because this is an issue and a subject most people are confused about. And again, you have this controversy. On one side, it's been proven to be good, and then another side is funded to challenge the original information that is proven to be correct. And of course, in between them is inserted the pharmaceutical industry. Now, some people say, well, spring water is, filled with a lot of heavy metals, et cetera, et cetera. It's a heavier water. That is true in most cases, but spring water comes from different parts of the world, and it contains different minerals. Keep in mind, nature doesn't just do one thing, it does everything to the extreme. Subtle to very extreme. Let's say well water. You get well water. And the well water may be heavy minerals and so forth, but you can filter that. But then you have the extreme to that, which is like hot springs. heavy mineral content, a lot of sulfur in most cases, but it's good for the body, particularly if you're soaking it, because it opens up the pores and it pulls toxins out of the skin. That's why hot springs were always very popular for as far back as humans can remember. In Japan, you have these hot springs, and you notice these particular species of monkeys, they like to just soak in it, Same thing with humans. When you soak in that water, particularly if it's, if it's tolerable, if you can get in it. Some of it is too hot, but then you have springs that are not as hot. You get in it and you just let that spring, those hot springs, pull the toxins out of your skin. It feels great. Now in Russia, there's a practice where they will jump in like frigid water, like you getting frigid water. And from there, they go into the sauna. Then they do it backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. That's called hydrotherapy. Oscillating the body's systems. Expand, contract, expand, contract. It's rewiring the brain. It's causing changes in your tissue, your blood flow. Everything is being changed because the hydrotherapy is two extremes. Extremely cold or extremely hot. Native Americans use saunas. They would take the hot rocks, put them in the fire, douse water on them, and it would create the steam. I've been in both. So what I'm saying is, let's look at hydrotherapy and water use. Next type of water, let's say alkaline water. Some people say, well, alkaline water is not natural. It's not natural. That's not true. Remember what I just shared with you. Nature does everything, not just one thing, it does everything in the extreme. No straight line. Nature is subtle and extreme. Alkaline water naturally occurs in the mountains. When that water is running down, when that snow melts, that's all alkaline water, mineralized alkaline water. Rainwater is distilled water. Through electrolysis, rainwater is distilled. So people say a lot of things, but they have no real body of knowledge. They're getting secondhand information, and they don't test or experiment or research for themselves. And then we have, of course, municipal water, which is being purified with all kinds of chemicals and heavy metals. And that water is the worst water to use. Distilled water, natural. Alkaline water from the mountains, as well as the hot springs, that's alkaline. Two types of alkaline water. Distilled water comes from the clouds. It brings up moisture. Through electrolysis, it rains. And then third, we have spring water that comes from under the earth. These are all natural. If they haven't been polluted with surface toxins and heavy metals and chemicals and so forth. Look, because something is alkaline does not mean, particularly water, how high alkaline that is somehow damaging. That is not true. When we're talking about chemicals, water is H2O. Ammonia is NH, has no oxygen in it. So we're talking about chemicals. Don't confuse it. Don't combobble stuff to make yourself sound like you're intelligent and you know what you're talking about, because you don't. You don't know chemistry. You don't know organic chemistry, neither do you know inorganic chemistry. When you understand it, you won't get confused about alkaline and acid. You understand the chemicals that are composed primarily that produce the effect of alkaline or acid. That's what you need to know. All right? So alkaline water, natural alkaline water, great. Is some of this alkaline water in the bottles good? Yeah. You don't need a lot of it, but yeah. Spring water, you don't need a lot of that either, but yeah. Distilled water, Sadie taught me and taught a lot of us that you cook with distilled water. You drink spring water. At that time, alkaline water wasn't available in jugs unless you went to a hot spring. Remember, what's the basketball player's name? Who they said he had AIDS, and then he went and got this natural spring water and this alkaline water and came back and cured himself. Played with the Lakers, Magic Johnson. Remember that. He went and collected water, alkaline water, spring water, real water, and used that to help heal himself. And he's still here. Keep that in mind. So the body have different requirements throughout the year. What the body needs in the spring, it doesn't need in the summer, and in the summer and the fall, and the fall and the winter. The body requires all of the seasons and the intelligence in nature to keep it balanced with nature. You know, nature has a process where it goes to sleep. Everything has a rest cycle. Nature goes to sleep in the wintertime. That's key. When nature goes to sleep, it's not producing. Now you have non-deciduous plants. A non-deciduous plant is simply a plant that does not drop its leaves. Deciduous plant drops its leaves. Native Americans used to use this expression. They would say, I know that the earth is still alive because they would see the pine trees that are evergreens. They never drop their leaves. They keep them year round. And then spring was considered the first new year, not the winter. But spring was always looked at as the new year. And again, every season has the intelligence from nature that humans and animals need, living through the natural cycles of nature. And it's not violent. Now, in some parts of the world, you have 3 seasons. And then in other parts, you just have 2 seasons. The rainy season, the dry season. The summer, the spring, and the fall. No winter, like in South Africa. So, every part of the world has the plants and the natural substances correlated through nature's intelligence in terms of how you use them. You have to be on this earth a very long time to understand the intelligence of nature and to appreciate it and not to destroy it. Okay? So that's what we touch on water. Now let's go back to VK for 1 second. Anywhere that you live, you will see some plants that almost have like a universal presence, like the wild onion. You know, the wild onion grows all over the place. And the wild onion looks basically like a scallion or green onions, the long stem onions with little white tips. Well, they're closer to being the natural ones than all of these other onions, which are not natural. But the onion that grows, all over the place at a certain time of the year, again, those onions are medicinal. Same thing with dandelion. Same thing with poke salad when it's very young. Elderberries. Elderberries are very powerful when you get them when they're nice and ripe. And that's a certain time of the year. There are literally thousands of plants that grow and are abundant at different times of the year. Each season produces certain plants, except the wintertime. The wintertime is over. There's no growth. There's rest. There's gestation period. So the key here is, when we formed the VK line of products, we looked at what's the best product. We took the onions, the green onions. We took the garlic, because there's a wild species of garlic. We took the ginger. There's a wild species of ginger. We took peppers. We took 14 different products that all have a natural origin that's not man-made. Let me explain something. Let's say you look at the green onion, for instance. We all know it's natural. It grows every year. It doesn't need man's intervention for it to grow. You can take that plant and you can cultivate it. Same thing with dandelion. You can cultivate it. It's already natural. Then you can cultivate it and do some things to it, but primarily you're just dealing with a cultivar from an original. You didn't have to crossbreed it or anything. You simply took it, you cultivated it. So it's going to look a little different from the natural ones that's growing in nature, but they still have the same DNA code. You're just cultivating it. You're giving it attention. You're giving it water. You're giving it fertilizer, and so forth. So you're cultivating it. So it's going to grow bigger, larger, because it loves the love that you're giving it. So it's going to be much more prolific in its appearance. All right? We took those plants only, and we used them. For instance, African bird pepper. There's a wild species of African bird pepper that grows. It's about this big. All they did was take that same pepper and just cultivate it. They just grew it. They bought it and put it in their gardens instead of having to go forage for it. That's all it is. There's a plant out here that's called kudzu. Kudzu is a natural plant. It grows naturally. But it's not from this part of the world. It's from Asia. They brought that plant here to stop soil erosion either in the early 1800s or either the late 1700s, early 1800s, late 1700s, something like that. But they brought it here to stop a lot of erosion because through the introduction of industrial agriculture, it was destroying like good quality farmland. A lot of erosion, a lot of destruction of the soil structure, killing the microorganisms in the soil, including earthworms, because they were using toxic, harsh chemicals at that time. Well, what the kudzu did was it stopped a lot of the erosion because its roots go deep and it stabilized the soil and the microorganisms growing around the roots of it. George Washington Carver saw the need to introduce certain plants into the agricultural cycle to keep the soil healthy. So, in fact, George Washington created what is called the rotation system. You grow a plant that robs the soil of a lot of nutrients. You add a plant like a legume plant, like vetch, etc., peas, etc., that brings nitrogen and structure back to the soil. So he created the rotation system, which is used in farming today. The VK Platinum products, DNA is from the original DNA from the intelligence of nature. That is what gave us the inspiration to go ahead and form the products. Now, apples, and a lot of us, we don't know the origins of apples or much of anything that we eat. Now, the most important thing is this. You have natural apples. You have the cultivars, and there are literally like 10,000 different varieties of apples. But you have two natural apples that I know. One is called the quince, and the other is called the crab apples. A little bitty, reddish-looking apple, and they grow on trees like further north. Like, I'm from Chicago, so they grow everywhere, right? So it's a little crab apple, and they're really, really tart. But at a certain time of the year when they're ripe, look, they are delicious. They taste like regular apples. So, what happened? The quince and the crab apple were crossed to create the modern day apples that we see today. You see? That is why I say you must learn the cycles of nature wherever you live. There's another tree that grows up there that these berries grow on, blackberries. And we used to eat them when they ripened. We used to eat them and eat them and eat them and eat them. And they like stain the sidewalks and everything. This is Chicago. Anybody in Chicago knows what I'm talking about, or Detroit, or Indiana, any of those, that location, anywhere up there, Wisconsin, any of those places, Minnesota. Well, these plants grow at a certain time of the year. And the great thing about the North is it grows a greater abundance of diversity than the South. The South has some powerful plants, but the North has the greatest amount of plants in terms of diversity. You see? So, for me, I actually got in the field. I went for years to learn every plant, identify every plant that was growing and how to use it. I mean, literally, I knew burdock. I could identify chicory, thistle, pokeroot, vetch, clover. I knew them all. And if I didn't know them, I went back into the woods or wherever they were growing, brought my books and identified it to make sure I had the right plant and how to use it. Was it good for human use or was it not? I learned all of that early in the game. So now I come to Georgia and I don't see a fraction of those plants growing in Georgia, not even a fraction. Maybe 10%. It just doesn't grow the same level of diversity that the northern region grows. That's a fact. But it does have some powerful plants. I was in South Carolina, the Geechee Islands in South Carolina, St. Helens Island, and other ones, Data Island, etc. And what I saw was this plant that grew, and it's called saw palmetto. Saw palmetto is like little dark, reddish, and sometimes purplish berries. And it grows on a fan type of palm, and it grows like in sandy soil. And so when I saw that plant, I took pictures of it, I took some of the berries, and then I later found out that that particular plant and those berries were good for male reproductive problems. And making a strong tea and drinking it regularly was also recommended by doctors. It was proven that it did work. It worked. And then you get another school of thought, as they always do, that says, well, maybe some men shouldn't take it because there are different forms of cancer. They play all of these games. But when you take 2 or 3 plants with nature's DNA and its intelligence, like the hawthorn berry, the elderberry, the saw petal meadowberry, and you make an extract from that and you take that regularly, you will see the results. Then you have something to base facts on. That should eliminate confusion, regardless of what doctors are saying what. This I know for a fact. And so, what we're looking at right now is a world that's turned upside down. Everything is backwards. Everything. All right? And let's move to the next subject. Let's deal with our other product that we formulated, and we call it VK Boost. VK Boost is 114 plants, all natural. None of them are man-made. From every part of this earth, from the forest, from the rainforest, from the prairies, from the plains, from the Arctic, from Europe, Africa, South America, from the Caribbean, from Asia, from North America, South America, from every part of our earth, and we combined all of that. So when you hear me talk about taking the VK platinum to flush the toxins, the parasites, the bacteria, the microbes, the fungus, all of that stuff out of your system, because yes, those substances like an acidic environment, and your body is a host to that because you keep feeding the body what creates an acidic environment. That acidic environment is the perfect environment for many things. In fact, let me give you another example. It was proven years ago that even cancer is a type of a virus. And bacteria, Sabi always talked about that. What's the difference between the virus, the bacteria, and the germ? He always said that. And what I'm saying is, they're one and the same. They're microorganisms. That may not necessarily be something that you want inside of your body. And on the flip side of that, there is a way to remove all that. So again, when I talked about flushing the body out first, it's like you get an apartment, you get a house. You want to clean that house up. Even if the house does look clean, you still want to add your touch to cleaning up that house before you move everything in. You always want to do that. It's like if you go to a public toilet, you don't just sit on it. You might clean it and put your tissue on it and get it prepared so that you can use it. We say, look, you want to flush this stuff out of your system. It's like being dirty and smelly and putting on $500 perfume. It's just not going to work. So it's like, or cologne or whatever. The key to it is you have to flush this stuff out. Get all of this stuff out. From the lymph, from the colon, from the organs, from the tissue, from the blood, all of the other circulatory elements in your body. You got to flush it out. Because remember, if the pineal gland becomes calcified, that means, keep this in mind, the body is 97, 98% water. But it's also the temperature that the body operates at. It's like 98, 97 degrees. That's heat. It's like having a humidifier or having a dehydrator operating at those temperatures. One is going to add moisture, one is going to take away moisture. So think about this. If your body is constantly heating itself, it's heated, and you're drinking something that creates a lot of residue in your system, and it migrates up to the brain, because remember, everything goes to the brain. The pineal gland and other parts of the brain will become calcified. That's the origin of Alzheimer's and other problems. How do you decalcify it? You decalcify it by flushing out everything that you put in your system that created those conditions. And you reverse it by doing that which will reverse it. For instance, distilled water, clean distilled water will help flush the body out. Drinking certain types of fruit, juice, eating certain fruit. Let me give you an example, like mango, like guanabana, like mamey, like papaya, that will decalcify the pineal gland. These are basic substances that have a cleansing effect anyway, fruits do. But we're talking about fruits that have a natural DNA, like the wild avocado. I've seen it. It's smaller. Remember, when man cultivates, it's always bigger because you're giving it love and attention that it did not get in the wild. Dandelion, try it. Take the dandelion, when those little white tassels come on it, that means the seed is ready to fly off and go find somewhere else to germinate. Grab all of them seeds, pick off the little tassel, take those dandelion seeds and plant them. And water them and nurture them. Look how much more prolific they will be compared to the ones that just grow in the wild. When you give a plant attention and love, it's always going to be more prolific. That's all we're talking about. I've seen the wild avocado, it's about this big. I've seen the wild strawberry, it's about this big. I've seen a lot of the natural plants that are wild plants. But when man cultivates them, they have different characteristics. They become larger, they're sweeter, they become more prolific in their appearance because you're giving it attention. Now, let's move on and let's deal with cleaning certain parts of the body. As I've shared before, and most people who are basically astute, they already know this. The central molecule of the blood is iron. The central molecule of chlorophyll from these plants, these trees, is magnesium. What we have to understand about the plant life on this earth, which is generally abundant, when we remove the building, the streets, the sidewalks, when we remove all of this, believe me, nature will take over. Because the plants must be abundant. Listen. One thing about iron is this. Iron corrodes. When we find ourselves aging and looking decrepit and old, it's because that iron is corroding. If you put enough plant life in that body, high chlorophyll content, high magnesium content, high broad spectrum nutrients in your body, it will influence that iron. In other words, the iron will not be dominant in the blood. It will be, but magnesium will have an influence on it. That's the difference. They talk about eating green leafy vegetables, but they're not talking about the green leafy vegetables that nature produces. And nature produces a lot of green leafy vegetables, as I talked about. You can eat many, many plants from nature with green leafy DNA that matches nature's intelligence, because nature created it. Spinach doesn't compare. Kale doesn't compare. Swiss chard doesn't compare. I don't care what lettuce, it doesn't compare to the plants that nature created. And I am telling you, when you take more of that chlorophyll into your system, like just go out and pick you some wild dandelion, come in and juice it and drink the chlorophyll and see how your body feels. Your body's going to be like, whoa, what is this? I've never had this. What? Let me tell you something. Nature's intelligence is so incredible. Listen, when it creates these colors, just like a little child, you're teaching them, this is green. What color is that? That's green. What color is this? This is red. This is purple. Those colors have a direct correlation to your body. Like those dark purples, that's for organs. Those dark greens, that's for blood. Those reds are for blood as well. Blood production from what? The liver and the spleen. When you understand these things, how nature produced these plants, they have specific colors, and those colors have a direct correlation on your health and your body, you see things differently. You see things that most people don't see. These people are driving around in their cars, but they didn't notice those little yellow lilies that come up in the spring, or those wild lilacs that grow up in the trees as a vine. They don't see them. They don't know what they're used for. They don't know anything about it. Learn how to identify the natural plants in your environment and how to use them. Make sure you identify them correctly. You don't want to identify them incorrectly. Identify them correctly. And then start to use them. Incorporate them into your life. That's why when we created the VK Boost, we wanted to look at the natural plants with nature's DNA. And that's key. So we've covered a lot, I know. But what I'm telling you is, you can remain healthy by denying yourself the, how do I put this, the indulgence of things that you know not good for you. You know they're not. By indulging in these things, what you're doing is you're compromising your body, and that iron is corroding faster. Let me say it again. You're damaging your body, and that iron in your blood that corrodes anyway is corroding even faster. Because you're giving it the elements that make it corrode fast. If you leave iron and moisture, it's going to corrode. It's going to rust. Our age is equivalent to the rust of iron. Even though the iron is an oxide, and the iron in us is a natural, complete spectrum of elements and minerals, etc. It's not just iron. It's surrounded with other minerals and elements as well. It's not extracted to create an oxide. It's whole. You see? That iron is still influenced by the stuff that we eat that's detrimental to us. But when you eat natural plants with nature's DNA, and you consume that, your body is going to transform. Watch somebody who has been sick and has been cured, or I should say, I don't like to use that word, let me reverse it. Reverse the corrosion and the disease. And if they have continued that lifestyle without compromise, it's like they turn back the clock 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Because the iron corrosion has slowed way down. It's really simple stuff. Nature's DNA and intelligence, man's creation. Man's creation, erosion. Savior would love hearing me say this. And nature's DNA and substances, life and slow erosion. Very simple. So I just wanted to share some of that information because, listen, we are entering a stage or a process in this world right now. We're in uncharted waters right now. Nobody knows what's going to happen. A friend of mine asked me earlier, do I think that this year or next year we'll see a lot of the calamities and the unwinding and the new world order systems coming in place? And my response was, look, there is no more time. Anything can happen at any moment while we're here. Man has lost his mind. He's lost his way. We're crazy. Insane. I don't even want to use the word insanity because that's too mild. Man has become a savage and a barbarian again. Where we're supposed to have grown out of that through enlightenment, we have become barbarians and savages again. And you add to that perversion and all the other stuff. We have basically forfeited our right to be on this planet. That's what's really happening. And nature's going to show that real soon. Well, it's already showing us. I mean, California on fire, one place is flooding, another place is having a drought. I mean, nature's fed up. And understand nature is a living thing. It's not just some big ball spinning. I mean, that is amazing. A big ball spinning in the universe, you know, just spinning in space. That is amazing. So, I'm going to conclude with this. If you want to stay on this earth, you're going to have to turn off all of this noise out here and following the crowd. You're going to have to go back to nature's DNA and intelligence to find your way. Because right now we are lost. Nature can put you back on track. You understand? And when you open up your mind back to nature, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. We're in heaven. We just destroyed it. Then what you will be able to do is open yourself up to all levels of knowledge. And you may be alone. You may not have other people you can communicate with, but that's okay. The key to it is get yourself on course. You're not here to save anybody. You're on this planet to do two things. Become the master, the God that you're supposed to be, and not to impose your will on anyone else. That's all you're required to do. Don't be confused by religious people and others. You're only here to do that. You're nobody's savior. The only savior you are responsible for and that you're ordained to act in is to save yourself. And from there, That's all you're required to do. And we're going to conclude with that. And please follow us on Instagram, and we have a lot more material coming out. But I wanted to share with you some things that was impressed on me, and hopefully you guys are able to take away some good information from this. And we'll do this again soon.